In question 59, we're given three statements, and we're asked which of them will always lead to an increase in the size of the population, always being the emphasised word, and that should already make us somewhat sceptical, given that in biology there is not much in the way of an iron law as there would be in physics. So the thing to do in this sort of question is to always question, see if there's a workaround, or conceive of an example in which this is not the case. So let's have a look at our three statements. Option 1, removal of intra-specific competitors, i.e. the removal of competition within your own species, within the population of your own species, for resources and so on. Well, this wouldn't necessarily lead to an immediate increase in the size of the population, because, for instance, if this removal of intra-specific competition was because there was an increase in availability of prey for the population in question, this may also lead to interspecific competition increasing, which may have a more punitive effect on the population size than the intraspecific competition did anyway. So we can conceive of a way in which this is not the case. Moving on to 2, supplying more of the nutrient that is at the lowest concentration. So this appears to be talking about plants and, well, plants more specifically, in the case that if you were to increase the concentration of the lowest concentrated nutrient in the soil, for instance, let's say it's potassium, and that's the limiting factor on the growth, will increasing potassium lead to increase in population? Well, yes, perhaps, but it's certainly not the case that nutrient shortfall is always the limiting factor on the growth of a plant population. There are other variables at play, for instance, the ability for a plant to disperse its seeds, for instance. So this is not the case. Finally, 3, a change in the organism's rate of reproduction. Will that lead to an increase in the size of the population? Well, not necessarily again, because increasing the rate of reproduction, for example, a bird increasing its clutch size, isn't necessarily going to correlate with an increase the survival of all of the hatchlings. In fact, in many cases, there is a process of stabilizing selection, seen here, where there is an optimum and there is a selection pressure against the extremes. So an extremely large clutch size and an extremely small clutch size are selected against. In fact, organisms which produce an intermediate optimum clutch size are the most likely to produce offspring, and those offspring are most likely to pass on that gene which leads to that behavior onto their offspring, and so it will increase in the population. So this kind of stabilizing selection is an example of why a change in the organism's rate of reproduction doesn't necessarily increase their population size. Sticking to the optimum would perhaps work instead. So we can say this is also wrong, and so our answer is A.